Today, I wanted to riff a little bit on perfectionism. And as you may know, I'm an Indigenous spiritual medium. I have been developing since 2013, and I am also a Virgo, which, if you know anything about astrology, it's quite synonymous to have perfectionism married to Virgo. And I will absolutely say that this is something that has definitely accompanied me on my spiritual development path and my mediumship development path. So I know it intimately, and it's something that I'm always negotiating with. It's just part of my essence. And through the art of astrology, I love astrology. I love human design. I love all these like personality type assessments. I don't let any of them pigeonhole me in any way, but I do find that a lot of them give you a little bit of permission slips. So, in being a Virgo sun, and I'm a 3-degree Virgo sun, which is the same placement as Mother Teresa, it is the thing that I have had to come to accept that this is something that I will negotiate in this life. So I premise this by just simply saying that this is an area of development that I know well. I know well. And, I'm not perfect at myself. And it's something that I'm always having to continue to find deeper levels of healing through. And, I go back to my mediumship development journey in 2013, and I had my first connection with, a young man in spirit, and I gave a reading to his mom. And the level of grief that was present in the room shocked me. It scared me. It terrified me. And I remember the look in her eyes after I had said his name, and she grabbed me. And, even after that experience, we kept in touch. She was lovely, but she definitely saw me as someone who could channel through her son. And that pressure that I felt, and that lack of experience, and that lack of training that I had at that time, because it was my first reading, what could I do? Instilled this fear in me that I needed to know what I was doing before I would put myself out there, right? And that is so quintessential my path. And that's what I did. In 2013, I set this goal to do 150 practice readings before I would even consider doing my first paid reading or putting myself out there publicly. Now, in 2013, the only development circle I had known of was, round trip 450 kilometers away. And I would drive that every week and also one Saturday a month to sit in a development circle. That's how devoted and dedicated I really was to the path. It took me almost 4 years to get 150 practice readings in. And, I kept an online development journal during this whole time. I never told anyone I had it, and only a few people had ever stumbled upon it, but I recorded everything that happened to me in those first few years. Everything, every thought, every fear, every win, every aha moment, every spiritual experience that was quite profound to me was captured in this online journal. And then I had an experience where I had mentioned somebody through it a few times that didn't want to be mentioned in a kinship to mediumship. So I ended up, the blog still exists, but it's hidden because I don't have time to remove their name everywhere. I really don't. So that just kind of like exists over there. But I captured everything, and that online blog ended up being my podcast, Spirit School, which launched in 2018, which again was another thing that I had to combat perfectionism with. If you don't know this, I had this online blog and I wanted to start a podcast. So I used the online blog as a way to inform podcast episodes. And for 6 months in 2018, I had been recording podcast episodes, and if I didn't delete it right away, it eventually got deleted. Like, there was at least 6 months of recordings that never saw the light of day because I either deleted them right away thinking they were not good enough, and who am I? At this time I'd only been a professional medium for a year out of the spiritual closet, and it took a health crisis. It took being hospitalized due to stress and being taken out of work and put on a heart monitor when I was in First Nations healthcare. And I was devastated, and I had this moment of like, I'm not wasting any more time. And so I had 8 episodes I had not deleted, and I said, fuck it, I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not wasting any more time. And I uploaded my 8 episodes, and then this podcast ended up being an online school, ended up being a physical school, might be a TV show now. It's like a book coming out. Like, you just never know like where things are going to go. But I was so tired of perfectionism. By the time I launched that podcast, I was like, screw it, I'm not wasting any more time. This podcast experience where I was able to just kind of say F it to the fears and the anxieties that came up, and that convincing myself that I wasn't ready, or who am I to say this, even though so and so already says this, and I'm not the first medium, right? So like, who am I? And I'm a bit of a slow study, so it does take me sometimes these health crises, or spirit to wipe the proverbial rug out from under our feet to be able to make these necessary moves and shifts. So I am a bit of a slow study, and my path is one of, I believe, an example of like slow and steady, because it took me 4 years to develop, and then it took me for another 4 years to go full time into my practice, and I'm on that 4 year cycle right now, and there's a lot of shifts happening. So I think I'll be working on like 4 year cycles, but to get to a point to make these necessary changes, it's almost has to be forced upon me, because I'm so afraid to make the shifts on my own because of perfectionism, because it's not ready, or I'm not clear enough on this yet, or this isn't all ironed out and dialed down. And like, as somebody who holds space for people in very vulnerable spaces, I think there is something to be said for being considerate and thoughtful and slow and steady in the process, and thinking about all the things. But we cannot ignore the fact that perfectionism can continue to get into our way, can continue to keep us from doing the things that we feel inspired to do, that we feel inspired from spirit, right? And I can see through my entire development journey how perfectionism has gotten in my way of my path progressing, maybe in a quicker way, though we know things work out perfectly in timing. I'm not hard on myself about that. But I can see different opportunities and different experiences that I have let go to the side, that I have passed on to other people because of perfectionism in the way. Perfectionism is definitely rooted in fear. And even though we can sometimes present our perfectionism in a very noble way, in a way that feels and can appear to be rooted and backed by our ethics and integrity, which your girl loves. We love that. And I love that you think like that. And I have trust in you, and I have faith in you. There is no denying that even though that exists, fear does not also exist. So fear is potentially at the root of why the perfectionism continues to come up as well. So one of the ways that I have continued to push through some of that perfectionism, one is getting in the habit of doing things well before they are ready. And I know that may seem reckless. I am trauma informed. I do consider myself to be an ethical entrepreneur, but there are things that I thought of and launched later that day without very much thought, and having to do a lot of course correcting and growing in the process. My membership is case example. Ran a program, my first ever online program, and people were like, how do we stay in touch with each other? How do we continue this? Had the idea for the membership. When I launched these programs before, I had workbooks, it was branded, my messaging was down, it was pristine. And my brand has been like that since the day I launched in 2017. Always been like that. It's just the standard. It makes me feel proud of what I'm bringing out into the world, but I bring substance to back it up. So it's not just all like really pretty marketing. So the fact that in the morning one day, it was actually July 18th, 2020 was the exact day, because I have somebody running the astrology on it right now. They volunteered to do that. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you, Chloe. Chloe Astrologer. I'll try to tag her below. She has a YouTube as well. Please go support her. She's incredible. But on that morning, I was like, oh, a membership. And I'd never been in a membership. I never had it on my radar to do. But that day, I put up a PayPal link in a Facebook group. I came up with what I feel like I could do. And I created a founding members rate. And it wasn't perfect. In fact, it ended up being a horrible business decision running a subscription through PayPal, because there was no automation, and a lot of customer service stuff kind of falls through the crack. And that's one of the things that I had to really fix as I was moving, and we fixed it a couple times. We continue to improve to find new, gentler, kinder, more ethical ways of doing business, at Spirit School. But, I just launched it that day, and I got 60 people in my first month of my membership. We just celebrated 4 years last week. August 6th, I'm recording this. August 1st is our anniversary. That's when I opened it to the public, but the program got in first. And this was a huge progress shift for me, because I launched it with no branding, and I launched it with like no real clear future plan, and people took a chance on me. We were all new to this. We were all new, and we've always been transparent about that. And the truth is, I had 25 people leave that first month, and my cat died, and I was in grief for the first time of my life. And It was a busy time, 2020, wasn't it? It was a very busy time for us all, and I was no exception during that time. And yeah, I will bore you with the other details around that, but it was healing for me to do that. And I still have the membership, and now I have a permission slip from the people who are still there from 4 years ago that we're going to grow together in this membership. And I may make commitments today that change in a couple months because I've changed. My teachings have changed. My experiences have changed. I'm more informed now. I know more now. So permission to change, permission to grow, permission to evolve. And I think that that is what perfectionism keeps us from doing. Whenever I feel a hesitation to do something because of perfectionism, I sit there and I ask myself, I give myself compassion first things first. And I'm like, you know what, Danielle? Anyone would feel like this in your position. There's a lot on the line. This is your brand. This is, people have an expectation around your work now. You have no choice but to kind of compare this to different things. Like anyone would feel like this in your position, right? Bringing that kind of common humanity to it, that acceptance, that common humanity to it. And then I'll just lovingly ask myself, through the eyes of love, through the lens of love. And I actually move the energy and awareness, and it just takes awareness. So even if you're a skeptic of all things spiritual, if I ask you right now to shift your awareness to listen to me through your heart, you'll probably be able to feel that shift, and you'll feel the energy move from your head down to your heart. And so I do that for myself. I get into my heart space, and I'll even say to myself, through the eyes of love, through the presence of love, which is a hugely powerful energy source, by the way, where is fear here? Is there something that I am not looking at that has fear attached to it that I need to reconcile before I embrace this, before I embody this? And I do that check on myself. And sometimes I may remember an experience I had at a younger age, and I may have to think about, what did I need at that time? Oh, I have that now. Yes, okay, I have that. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I have that. That's an old fear. That's an old fear. And it's the most important part is, I think, through certain ways of presenting this type of process, because it is quite therapeutic. And I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I'm in therapy. I've had the same therapist for 6 years since I've been a professional medium. We all need support, and we need human support, and we need spiritual support. So it all belongs, it all fits. But sometimes we can really tend to be in the drama of things. And the way that I present it to you, through first connecting in with the essence of love, with the eyes of love. I love angels. I know I don't talk about it very much on this channel, and not a lot of people are open to that, but they're the most loving beings, other than dogs, that I have ever experienced. In fact, dogs and angels, to me, even cats too, dogs and cats, and I'm sure if I sat with a mountain lion, it would be the same thing, but like animals have a very similar presence to angels, very, very similar. And they're very high vibe, and they are just an embodiment of love. They're just the embodiment of love. So I connect in with that essence, like that love, before I do that self-inquiry work, because I've already taken care of myself. I've already managed my, nervous system to the point where I can approach this with a lens of love and compassion. And that's really what you have to get to before you can do that reconciliation work, before you can really move through that. And so, I see perfectionism wrapped up in nobility and, prefaced with integrity, which it is, but in the spiritual space, I'm sure anyone who's listening to this already has moved beyond dualistic thinking. It's not this or this, it's this and this. Multiple truths exist at any time in anything. And yes, we're all right. Guess what? We're all right, a little bit of us, right? And so it's like, I've seen it happen where people are like, oh, like me, it's like, I'm not doing readings so I get 150, because guess what? 150 empirical measurement system, not spiritual at all, will let me know I'm good enough. I know I'm going to feel good enough by 150. Guess what? You can talk to a medium with 35 years experience, and they'll still tell you they question if they're good enough sometimes. We're in the healing arts. We're in an art form. It's just about creating tools and resources and pathways to counter that, to challenge that, to restore balance to that. And that's what I ask you to do when perfectionism comes up, because it is going to come up. It might come up stronger for you than other people. I was just with my membership, about an hour ago, and we had somebody who's in academia, right? Like I get it, like that's a reality of your life. And I'm here to say that in the spiritual space, we can lead by example a different way of being. And we can be more retrospective, and we can give ourselves that space to be reflective, and we can give ourselves that space to process. And if my therapist listens to this, she's going to be like, I know you got this. Because I probably don't sound like this in sessions, but this is the fun part about spiritual development. This is why we're here. This is the path. We just got to start discovering for ourselves and leading by example a way of being that we want to see more collectively out in the world. And the truth of the matter is there's no better time for it. We've never had more freedom. We've never had more respect. And even this year in 2024, the crappy parts, the charlatans, the people who were serving out of integrity, the exposure's here. I mean, it's in the numerology, it's in the astrology, nothing's hiding anymore. So now is actually the time. And probably one of the safer times to really start coming out spiritually. I really just wanted to jam a little bit on perfectionism. There's a lot more I could probably say. It's something I've moved through, continuing to do things before they're perfect and getting in the habit of doing that and building evidence around. And then the other thing is just looking through the lens of love at, what rooted fear is actually creating this narrative, and can I challenge that, and can I create a new one? And you can do things before you feel ready, and you can prove to yourself that your intuition guiding you, there's a reason for its madness. So just learn to lean into trust with that.